The idea first took root during one of those aimless, lonely nights that seemed to stretch into forever, the blue glow of my monitor the only light in my cramped apartment, as I fell down a rabbit hole of local forum posts and blurry, shaking camera phone footage all centered on the so-called smiling man. A figure said to appear on lonely rural roads or at the dead ends of forgotten suburbs, always described as a tall, impossibly thin man in a faded suit, his face stretched into a grin far too wide for any human face, just standing there watching, and if you approached him, if you were foolish enough to ask what he wanted, he would simply tilt his head and whisper, "I've been waiting for you," before vanishing into the shadows, leaving behind only the scent of ozone and a deep, cellular dread. As a freelance researcher with too much time and a nagging skepticism towards the paranormal, I dismissed it as classic creepypasta, a patchwork of Slender Man and the Tall Man from Phantasm, recycled for bored teenagers, until I cross-referenced the sightings and found a disturbing cluster less than 40 miles from me, all within a 10-square-mile grid of backroads bordering the decaying lumber town of Hemlock Grove, and what chilled me wasn't the descriptions of the figure itself but the mundane, specific details that were consistent across decades of reports. The smell of wet wool and copper pennies, the sound of his joints clicking like old typewriter keys when he moved, and the fact he was always seen under the only malfunctioning streetlight on the block, flickering in a steady, epileptic rhythm. Armed with a high-powered flashlight, a GPS tracker, a digital recorder, and a healthy dose of arrogant curiosity, I drove out there just after sunset on a Tuesday, the sky bruising purple and black, telling myself I was debunking a myth, that I'd find nothing but overactive imaginations and the silhouettes of mailboxes. The first hour was laughably normal, just me sipping lukewarm coffee, driving slowly down roads named after trees that had long since been cleared, the woods pressing in on both sides like a dark, silent audience, my headlights carving a tunnel through the absolute blackness. I'd marked 5 reported sighting locations on my map, and the first 3 were utterly empty, just patches of cracked asphalt and the gentle hum of crickets, my confidence growing with each dead end. But then I turned onto Old Mill Road, and the atmosphere shifted palpably, the crickets falling silent as if a switch had been flipped, the air growing colder, denser, tasting of damp soil and something faintly metallic. My headlights swept across a solitary old-fashioned streetlight halfway down the lane, its bulb sputtering on and off in a frantic, irregular stutter, casting jagged strobes of sickly yellow light, and beneath it, just at the edge of the cone of darkness, stood a figure. My blood turned to ice slurry in my veins. He was exactly as described, unnaturally tall and gaunt, swimming in a gray suit that seemed to absorb the flickering light, his posture all wrong, spine curved in a way that suggested broken marionette strings. And his face, from that distance, it was just a pale oval, but even across 50 yards I could see the smile, a gash of dark contrast that didn't move, didn't waver, a fixed, permanent fixture. My rational mind screamed statue, prank, a trick of the light, but every primal instinct in my hindbrain was shrieking at me to floor the accelerator and never look back. Instead, gripped by a morbid documentary-style obsession, I rolled my window down an inch, the cold night air rushing in, and I heard it, a faint dry clicking like bones knocking together in a gentle breeze. I fumbled for my recorder, my hands trembling, and whispered into it, "Subject observed at location 4, matching physical description. Conducting approach." I don't know what possessed me to get out of the car. Maybe it was the need to prove my own bravery to the empty woods, or the desperate hope of capturing something undeniable, viral, life-changing. The door hinge screamed into the silence as I stepped onto the gravel shoulder, the flashlight beam shaking violently in my grip as I trained it on him. He didn't flinch. The light illuminated the horrific specifics. The suit wasn't just gray, it was threadbare and streaked with dark, unidentifiable stains. His hands, too long and too pale, hung at his sides, fingers twitching slightly, and that smile, it wasn't an expression of joy but a physical deformity, the corners of his mouth ripped or stretched almost to his earlobes, revealing rows of small, needle-like teeth that glistened in the strobe. "Hello," I called out, my voice a pathetic croak. The clicking intensified. He took a step forward, not with a walk but with a jerky, marionette-like shuffle, his limbs moving out of sequence, and the streetlights flickering seemed to sync with his movements, each pop of light finding him a few feet closer. The smell hit me then, wet wool yes and copper pennies, but underneath it, the sweet rot stench of a long-closed meat locker. I backpedaled, my heel catching on a root, and I stumbled, the flashlight flying from my hand and shattering on the asphalt, plunging half the world into deeper darkness. He was 10 feet away now, 5, his head tilting to a 60-degree angle, the grin never changing, his eyes black pools that reflected no light. I scrambled backwards on my hands and knees, gravel biting into my palms, a scream trapped in my frozen throat. Then he spoke, and his voice was the worst part. Not a deep monster movie growl, but a high, reedy whisper, like dry leaves skittering across concrete, yet it cut through the silence with absolute clarity. "I've been waiting for you, Alex." My name. He said my name. A fact I had told no one in my forum deep dives, a fact that had no business living in the mouth of this forest phantom. Paralyzing terror unlocked my limbs and I surged to my feet, sprinting for the car, the clicking sound now right behind my ear, the smell suffocating me. I wrenched the door open, fell inside, and slammed the lock down just as a long, pale hand slapped against the window with a sound like raw meat on glass. I didn't look, I just spun the tires, spraying gravel, the car lurching onto the road as I saw him in the rearview mirror, standing perfectly still under the strobing light, his head still cocked, watching me flee. I drove for an hour in a blind panic, only stopping when I was back under the safe, bright glow of highway gas stations, my body shaking uncontrollably. 4 days I was a mess, jumping at shadows, sleeping with the lights on, trying to rationalize it, a shared psychotic episode, a coordinated hoax, anything but the supernatural. But the proof was on the recorder. When I finally gathered the courage to listen, my own frightened narration was there, the sound of my footsteps, the flickering buzz of the streetlight, and his whisper crystal clear, "I've been waiting for you, Alex." I had my viral proof, the smoking gun, but the thought of publishing it, of inviting that attention, now filled me with a new kind of dread. The story should end there, a classic ghost story with a jump scare finish, but the true horror, the part that coils around my spine every night, came weeks later. The nightmares were constant, not of the smiling man but of me standing under that flickering light, wearing that stained gray suit, my face stretched into that terrible fixed grin watching cars slow down on a lonely road. I started sleepwalking. I'd wake up in my kitchen, standing in the dark, or once on my front porch, my feet muddy. The smell of wet wool and copper began to linger in my apartment, no matter how much I cleaned. And then the changes. I caught my reflection in a dark window one night and saw my smile looked wider. My jaw ached constantly. I developed a sensitivity to light, preferring the gloom of my curtained apartment. The hunger started too, a craving for something raw and metallic that made my stomach churn. The final descent into understanding was slow and terrible. I found myself drawn back to Old Mill Road, not in terror, but with a somber, gravitational pull. I went at dusk. The streetlight was still flickering. And I understood. The smiling man isn't a ghost or a monster. He's a role, a curse, a parasitic mantle passed on through sheer, unadulterated terror. He wasn't waiting for me that first night. He was auditioning me. And I, with my arrogant investigation, my need to document and dissect fear, had passed. The whispering voice wasn't a threat. It was an induction. The clicks in my joints have started, a faint popcorn sound in my knees and shoulders. I can feel the suit, not on my skin but in my mind, a gray, smothering presence waiting to materialize. I am becoming the landmark, the local horror story. Soon, I will be the thing standing under the broken light, and some other curious, foolish soul will stop their car, will step out into the silence, and I will tilt my head, my impossible smile already in place, and I will whisper the only truth I have left: I've been waiting for you. The investigation isn't over. It never ends. It just changes perspective. And now, from this side of the smile, I realize the most horrifying part of the legend isn't the encounter. It's the desperate, lonely eternity that comes after, the endless waiting for the next person brave or stupid enough to step into the light and set you free, all while knowing with a sinking absolute certainty that you are just the latest in a long, long line of smiling men, and your only purpose now is to ensure you are not the last. I can feel the pull of the road now. The streetlight is calling. I have to go. I have to wait.